Hi, everyone, and welcome to this web masterclass of Shell Ideas 360. My name is Frazier, and I'm from the Shell Ideas 360 team. Uh, Firstly, a quick note on safety. Please ensure you are in a safe environment while you attend this webcast, and I hope you are aware of your emergency exits. Uh, Coming to today's webcast, and before we move into the content and I let Deepa basically take over, I would like to first start off by reminding all of our students that April 20th is the deadline. So please start working start working towards your project proposals. Make sure that you are as far ahead as possible. Please use the mentors as much as you can. I know this is the last couple of weeks that you have to finalize your submissions and then send those across. So please use the support of your mentors as much as you can. And if you all are having any troubles with regards to the form or even in terms of being able to reach out to your mentor, say for example, or any technical difficulty or anything that you're not able to understand within the form, while you can definitely approach your mentor, please do not hesitate to drop us a line at the Shell Ideas 360 inbox, so we can clarify your doubts at the earliest, and that way you're not held back or you're stuck in any in a spot because you're not able to move forward on things, or not able to particularly understand one part of the form. So please do keep that in mind. That said, today we have with us Deepa, as I mentioned, and Deepa's no new face. We have had Deepa basically on one of our previous webcasts. Hi, Deepa.
Hi.
So Deepa had earlier given us a good context in terms of sustainable UN sustainable goals, and how each of it, and when I say each of it, I mean the stress texts, how they all work together, and that's why it's very critical for us to be looking at all three aspects, and which is where the Shell IDs 360 program comes across as a program that is trying to help develop ideas across the stress texts, and not just only particularly one. Uh, and for today's masterclass, this is a masterclass, and it's something that is exclusive to you stage 2 students. So we have Deepa, who has said that she's basically going to help us in talking about how can you all start to look at your idea and look at it from a commercial perspective. Now, this is something that is definitely required for you all to be able to start thinking and start working towards turning your idea that you had initially submitted in stage 1, and spinning it around into a business case. So without further ado, I'm going to let Deepa basically say a quick hello to everyone, and then jump right into it.
All right. Thank you, Fraser, for the introduction. Hi, everyone online. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone from various parts of the globe. Thank you for taking the time to tune into this masterclass. And as Fraser mentioned, the topic of today's masterclass is going to be on how to commercialize your idea. So before we begin, I'm just going to share my screen. So, Fraser, I'll look to you to figure out whether you can see my screen all right.
Yes, it's working fine.
Okay, great. All right. So, again, so a brief introduction before I start. Adding on to Fraser's introduction, I'm currently part of Shell's Research Connect and Game Changer organization based out of Houston, Texas. My group looks to harness novel and innovative technologies from the external world, be it academic universities, research labs, or startup companies, and to bring them into Shell to solve our world's energy challenges. My personal background is in chemical engineering with technical expertise on developing new materials. And I'm very passionate about figuring out ways on how we can take ideas from a lab scale setting into an industrial scale setting. so that more and more discoveries can reach their full commercial potential. And in this webinar, I'll delve a little bit on what it takes to commercialize your ideas, some tips and best practices. With that background, we come to the agenda for today's talk. I'll first start by examining what is technology commercialization and how does the technology maturation funnel look like. We'll then spend some time talking about the lean startup methodology or the business model canvas. I'll then briefly touch upon the various startup funding structures and share some best practices or tips and tricks for successful startups. Now, before we begin, a brief disclaimer. All the thoughts and opinions expressed in this masterclass are solely mine and do not reflect those of Royal Dutch Shell or its affiliates. All right, so what is technology commercialization? This may seem as an obvious question, but I do want to spend some time in the beginning to make sure that we are all aligned during this brief discussion. In my mind, technology commercialization is figuring out how one can take an idea conceived from basic fundamental research towards its full commercial potential and be able to run a profitable business with that idea. Throughout this masterclass, I'll refer to a specific example from my personal experience. When I was a researcher at grad school, I had worked on some basic fundamental physics, which showed me that molecular structures can be rearranged under specific conditions. And this could lead to strong colloids, a novel discovery. And colloids are basically dispersions of one material into another, or dispersion of solid particles into a liquid media. So my dilemma was, okay, great, I made a discovery, yay, but so what? Who else cares about it? And most importantly, how can I make sure that there's an application for this discovery? So I had to pull together my background, my experience, my expertise to think about possible applications. And so the first step that I would say is that think about what possible application could your discovery have in the real world. The next step is to think about whether this application can be converted into a product or a service. In my case, I was thinking about my discovery of novel colloids, and I thought that maybe it could be used as a framework to develop new liquid based consumer products, and that could be the application. So once I make this product, will anyone buy it? And will they buy it in such a way that it will make a profit for me and my investors? So the key lesson here is you want to develop an idea only if there's a profitable market out there for that idea. So that's basically the idea behind technology commercialization. Now, let's talk a little bit about the technology maturation funnel and the different life cycles and the terminologies associated with it. So the first step, like I mentioned, is making a scientific discovery. If we take into account all the research work that is done in the world, less than 1% of the research pans into a commercially viable product or a service. And there's good reason behind it. This brings us to the maturation funnel. So with discovery, that's the first step of your idea generation, your aha moment. You then need to take the discovery and develop it further, looking into possible applications and the path of feasibility in order to get there. The next step is your proof of concept or showcasing what you have envisioned. Like you basically need to demonstrate that the idea that you've been thinking about can actually work. And then the final step is your actual product launch or the use of your idea in operations or deployment of your idea in an actual field or a real trial test. So if I expanded on my colloid example from before, so I would say that my first step was the colloid discovery, the discovery that molecules can be rearranged. Then I had to think about the application. So basically developing that idea into what a product, consumer goods product would look like. Then I had to make a minimal viable product that is actually show somebody that, look, my idea works in an actual liquid-based consumer product. And then finally, I would take that idea and actually deploy it within an asset or a field. And then the company would take the entire proof of concept and actually apply it within its operations. This end to end process can take months, if not years. Sometimes just figuring out what the application can be can take months. Developing the proof of concept can be years. Same with the deployment, it can take a long time. Therefore, the funnel always gets narrower and narrower as stronger ideas take precedence over others. There's another terminology that I want to touch upon, which is used very commonly within the industry, and that's the technology readiness level scale or the TRL scale. And it's shown here. The scale basically is very similar to what I covered in this life cycles of the funnel. And it tries to explain how ideas move through commercialization from ideation to development to your actual deployment and use within your field. Now, next, we come into the nitty gritty of the commercial model. And I've adapted the lean startup methodology called the business model canvas. The business model canvas or the BMC is basically a summary of your entire business model and your strategy for achieving your objectives. Everything represented in a single slide. This slide has a lot of info on it. So let me walk you through this. So again, referring back to the colloid discovery example, my first step was to figure out whether there was any application for that discovery or not. I concluded that the liquid-based consumer products would be a good application. So how do I get there? That is, how do I ensure that my technology is actually used to make a product? So the first step to think about is your value proposition. So you start here on number 1. The value proposition tells you why anyone else in the world should care about this technology or should care about your idea. Here, you must explain how your idea could be used to reduce costs or increase profits compared to the status quo today. In my example, I had figured out that the application of my discovery of novel colloids could make the consumer goods industry develop products more cheaply and would be more stable for longer periods of time. Thus, exemplifying that one can achieve better quality at a lower cost. So that was my value proposition. The next step from 1 to 2 is to identify your customer segments. So the sector that will actually use this technology. In my case, it was the consumer good manufacturing companies. Then we come to key partners. So key partners are other companies or other entities that will work together with you in order to cater to the customer. So in my case, it was the product formulators. So basically, I would work with other product formulation companies and access their skills and expertise and use their resources, scientists, maybe patent technologies, or maybe even tools to actually get to my customer base. Now, how will I reach my customers? It'll be through channels. So that's number 6. So channels can be direct sales, face-to-face communication, or door-to-door knocking. And then what will set me apart from my competition is that I'll make sure that I will develop a tailored solution for what my customer needs. So I'll also then make sure that I have thought about the cost structure and the revenue structure. So the cost structure is basically all the costs involved in me developing my business. So that's the raw materials, the R&D, the sales and marketing costs. Then will be the revenue structure. Like how exactly will I earn my revenue? It could be through some sort of a licensing model, or it could be through some sort of a buyout or an exit strategy. And as long as my revenue is greater than my cost, I'll make a profit. That's the basic P&L 101 structure. And note that this takes a long time to get to profit. Like some industries, depending upon which sectors they are in, can take years, if not decades, to actually make a positive profit. So the key lesson here to remember is that when thinking about technology commercialization, you need to think through all of this right in the beginning. You don't need to be perfect, and this does not need to be final, but you do need to put in some effort on all of this right in the beginning after you've thought through your idea. So with that, I'll go to some funding structures. So there are a lot of different ways. Now, now the point I want to make here is, so going through the various steps. So let's say you've thought about your discovery, your application, and then you've thought through your initial business model canvas. What do you do next? You need to move towards execution. Now, but to do that, you need funds or you need money. So the first thing is figure out how can you solicit or get money. Here I've highlighted some of the different funding scenarios and I'll walk through each one by one. The first step or the first option is bootstrapping, which is basically using your own money to fund your venture. You can make sure that you control your expenses, you control your spending, and you invest your own personal money into your company. Now, one caveat to note here is that people typically tend to underestimate the amount of effort and the complexity of running a startup. So they run out of funds very fast. But at the same time, you have your freedom, you have your flexibility, you can work at your own pace. So maybe bootstrapping would work for you. The other option is soliciting money through friends and family, or even crowdsourcing nowadays. Kickstarter is a great example. So you need to think through whether you can raise some funds from your family members and will they invest in you and your idea. The next step is your angel investors, which are people with a lot of disposable income who are looking to invest in the next big breakthrough. Now, these angel investors can be strategic or non strategic investors. So, for example, strategic investors means people who are from some specific field or specific industry. They cater to that sector only. Or the non strategic ones can be people generally who pool in their money for a lot of different ideas, who want to diversify their portfolio. Sometimes crowdfunding could fall under non strategic angel investing as well. The other option is the venture capital firms, which are looking into the next big idea out there, the next big Google or the next big Facebook out there. Then we have the corporate ventures. So the corporate ventures are basically arms of existing large organizations. And they are looking to invest in the next game changing idea or the game changing venture within their specific field or industry. Finally, we have the series investing. So this is a little bit more mature. This comes into play when your technology is at a much more matured stage in the TRL scale. And it involves more complex deal structures with stock options, equity, deal structures, and so on and so forth. And they are called the Series ABC funding and beyond. Now, with that, I've shared a lot of different information, and I hope it clarifies on a step-by-step basis how to get there. With the last slide, I'll share a little bit about the summary and some best practices for successful startups. The first thing that I would add is be ready or amenable to change. What I mean is that use a trial and error approach. For example, try X. If X doesn't work, then try Y and see what happens. Keep pivoting until you're at the right place. Next best practice I would say is try one market feedback and listen to your customer. For example, in my novel colloid example that I was talking about, I started with some specific molecules in my system. And I received feedback from my customers that they did not care about these specific molecules that I'm talking about, but rather wanted to know how the idea would work with other molecules. So then I pivoted slightly to adapt to my customers or market needs. Now, a key thing to remember here as a caveat is to also pursue the right customer. For example, if you're willing to say, let's say if you want to sell waterproof paint, you want to make sure that the customer that you're targeting really has a problem or a pain point with his current paint product. Don't try to sell something to a customer who does not have a pain point that can be resolved with the solution you're providing. The next tip is develop the minimal viable product or the MVP. This basically means that focus on developing the minimal version of a product that can be applied. Don't spend too much time trying to perfect the product because guess what? Based on your customers' feedback, you'll have to change it anyways. So this is about learning as a process. The next and probably the game changing feature is the people. Make sure that you hire the right people who have a similar vision but bring in diversity in their skills and approaches. You need to be aligned. The team needs to be aligned on why you're doing what you're doing, but at the same time be able to pull together different skill sets from technical to sales to finance to actually make it work. And make sure you're also networking with the right people. This includes talking to customers, talking to industry experts, talking to mentors. There's absolutely no substitution or alternatives to good old networking. And finally, the most important is to persist and to persevere. Ideas get turned down and rejected all the time. Some of the reasons for this may not be under your control, such as if your customers' needs change or priorities change. So all you can do is show perseverance and find another customer. But keep trying until you succeed, and you will. With that, I'll wrap up my masterclass and open to any questions you may have. Over to you, Fraser.
Thank you so much for that, Deepa. It was really informative. I think a lot of our students will definitely benefit from it, because I think one of the major challenges that we have seen over the past couple of years as well is that students tend to, as in largely from a more technical background as such, and because of which they're not able to think from this point of view. So thank you so much for walking our students through that. In terms of some of the questions that we have with us today, is so you mentioned about the whole process of actually looking at your idea from a commercial, as in from this whole perspective of seeing it, how business ready is it, or and with that in mind, uh, could you highlight one of the challenges that you may have come across, through the various people that you have interacted with in the past, or through Game Changer, just to give our students a little more idea around that?
Yeah, sure. So I would say one of the biggest challenges, as I had mentioned earlier,
Sorry,
is
sorry, one second, Deepa.
yeah,
I think
sure.
you're still screen sharing. If you could just
Oh
stop.
yeah, yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you for that note.
no worries.
Okay, is
Yeah.
this better?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. All right. Okay, so I would say one of the biggest challenges through the ideation to deployment stage is people don't necessarily think through all the different aspects. Like what I was mentioning with the business model canvas, is that so for a technical person like me, as a scientist, like maybe I'm a little bit too focused on the technical aspects of the idea. And I don't necessarily think through the business model, the revenue structure, the cost structure, and how important it is to listen to the customers and like going and networking, talking to the customers. And I may spend too much time on focusing on just the technical part. So therefore the key lesson is to think through the entire business model structure at a high level. Like I said, you don't have to be perfect, you don't have to have all the answers in the beginning, but you do need to think through the different aspects. So that's what most people miss out, I feel.
Okay. Yes, I
Yeah.
think that's something that is quite critical, and I find it really interesting. Say, for example, if it sometimes just helps for students to start thinking of themselves as a customer, and then probably what is it that they would want. I guess it might really help them in just thinking of it from a consumer angle, and that way they will start to realize probably this is something more that they could do or add on to their idea.
Indeed. Yeah.
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 uh, uh, my next question is uh, around the whole process of actually looking at starting your idea as a business. And you mentioned the various stages of funding, and one of the things that sometimes students find difficult to navigate, which you did throw some light on, in terms of that there are you could either bootstrap it, or you could go out for an angel investor, or you approach family and
Mhm.
friends.
Mhm.
But I think somewhere, some students basically have this question, which is, how much is it that I should be looking to get through, so that I can, be able to still pursue my idea. Because usually we see a lot of students actually working on an idea.
Mhm.
They have a larger number, obviously, in
Mhm.
mind for the completely full-fledged idea. But initially, for them to start, just thinking in, taking baby steps basically towards it. Uh,
Absolutely.
from a financial perspective, any tips that you could give for that, so that they are able to still continue to think as to how they can really roll it out as a business, even if it would be smaller steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so one of the things that I think I would say is think about your minimal viable product, right? That's the MVP. So that's one of the best practices I shared. So minimal viable product is, put the least amount of effort to show something that works, right? And then you can tweak it later and work on it later. But the idea behind why the industry advocates on minimal viable product is that that can be used in order to advocate for additional funds, while at the same time giving some conviction to your investor that that his or her investment is doing something, right? So I would think about that in like small steps. So you can start. So the first step is typically the seed funding, which is at the very early stage. The seed funding helps the proof of concept, and that's where your minimal viable product comes. So you need to really listen to your customer and ask him or her as to, what will help, what will solve his pain point. And you need to be able to show something that will demonstrate that, look, this is solving the problem. And with regards to investment, just spend your time, energy, resources only on that. Don't try to perfect it. And you can always pivot, right? That's the beauty of the whole startup world. Try something, get feedback, then incorporate that feedback, try again, right? So you don't have to make like 5 layers, like if you can just do something really quickly and test it out, and then get feedback and make it as a loop. So I think that's going through that, thinking about the minimal viable product, I would say, is the best step first.
All right, that's great.
Yeah.
I think so. Yes, we need to, have this continuous process of actually, learning what is it that the consumer wants, and
Absolutely.
continuously keep incorporating. So it's always like you are in continuous development,
Absolutely.
and I think so. This is something that should be considered even once you. Roll out your product as well. So if you, for example, if you look at and this is just for our students, so if you look at any of
Mhm.
the larger social media platforms that are out there, you see how they keep improving, or just for example, if you look at your mobile applications itself that you have installed on your handset, you still continue to see get updates, and that is basically either newer features being added, or some bugs being fixed because of the feedback that they have been receiving. So
Yeah.
that's really insightful.
Mhm.
One last question before we
Yeah.
can wrap
Right.
up for today,
Of course.
is around mentors, and now I know that you are also a mentor for one of our teams.
Yeah.
Just from that perspective, how important is it to have to have someone mentor you, right, obviously right now this is more at a developing the idea stage, but
Yeah.
when students want to go out, reach out to entrepreneurs, sorry, reach out to investors, how do they continue to keep that mentorship going?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like I said, mentorship is maybe is underrated, I would say. You absolutely, you need mentors, you need experts. But one thing that I would keep in mind is, mentorship can take a lot of different levels, and you can have multiple mentors for different reasons. So, for example, you can have mentors who are experts from a specific industry, who will share with you their industry knowledge, their experience built over a long period of time. Then you could have mentors, which are people with strong networks with different industries and so on and so forth. So those would be other type of mentors who will help you plug in into this networks. Your third type of mentors could be, your angel investors. They could also be your mentors. They'll help you navigate the path of, the funding scenario and how to go through that. I think the room's call is ringing again. One second.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, so like I said, so the third is, mentors were your angel investors. Then the other type of mentors could also be actual people who are your peers, like other startup companies who've been through the same shoes and can share their experience. So I would say I would actually encourage you to have multiple mentors from different areas from whom you can learn a lot of different experiences, get different perspective. Because remember, your strength is in collective understanding of, the startup ecosystem and how to get there. It's not just about your technology, it's not just about finance, it's not just about your funding structure, but as a whole. So therefore, having mentors who can help you understand or navigate all these different aspects is very critical, I would say.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think so. That's really great. Um, with that, I think that's all the time. I feel we have anyways run over. Thank you, Deepa, for sharing your time, giving us your valuable time, not just only for this masterclass, but also previously on one of our webcasts.
It's my
Um,
pleasure.
it's been great to have you, and I'm sure that our students have really enjoyed and gotten a lot of value from attending these the webcasts as well as this masterclass. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, Going to our students, again, just a quick reminder, you all have, it's more like a clock ticking right now, so you all have lesser and lesser days. Please do, start working on your, as in, look to submit your stage 2 submissions before the deadline, so that way you're not like making a last minute rush. And we have a couple more master classes coming up. There's one around how to make the perfect proposal, so something to look forward to. We will have more details emailed to you shortly, so do keep a lookout for our email about these webcasts, about these master classes, and hope to see you again. Thank you all for joining us today, and have a nice day.
Thanks, Fraser, and good luck, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.